welcome to Americans Learn. My name is Lauren, and today I'm going to learn about how Hollywood shot actors with arrows before CGI. My guess is that they would come up with like a rig of some kind with the arrows already sticking out of it and then reverse the footage, yank it away from the actor as they, and then reverse it. That's my assumption, is that that's what they did, was that they put them in costume with the arrow already in it, and then on strings or something pulled the arrows away. Either that or they just really like shot them with they not sharp arrows, but like they had something like a foam like thing and they shot them with for real and just went into the foam or whatever. I don't know, but the point is we're gonna find out how they did it.
Oh, fun! Today we test how before CGI, they shot actors with arrows using practical effects. Some of the effects I'll be building today are pop-up arrows, steel pronged arrows that shoot into wooden armor, and cannons that launch hundreds of arrows at a time.
So I think I got two. Pop-up arrows wouldn't have thought of, but like the little arrows that go into something wood. I said foam, but like wood, that's what I said. Really shooting somebody.
There's not a whole lot of information on how they did this stuff back in the day, so I'll be having to figure it out on my own.
Fun.
The first method of getting shot by an arrow is the pop-up rig. I've got monofilament rigged to this pop-up on the shield, and it's anchored to my belt loop. So now when I raise the shield...
Oh! Cool!
Idiot! Essentially a spring-loaded lever that hides underneath your costume, and then the arrow folds over to the side out of view. It doesn't work if the arrow is visible the whole time it's flipping up. It needs to swing out towards the camera so that it's foreshortened as it pops up.
Okay, that's really cool.
From a book, so I 3D printed my own interpretation. I started out with this
little cheaty, but okay.
But it was way too big to hide underneath a shirt, so I scaled it down as small as I could and added some slots for Velcro straps.
Okay, and that's the beauty of film too. I guess you could kind of even do that in a theater though, if you depending on how the theater is built and like where you are, but like depending on where the sight lines are, you could probably get a pretty solid view of a person like actually. I thought it was going to be like a collapsible thing when he said pop-up arrow. I thought it was going to be like those knives that like you can push the blade into and then it would shoot out that way, which is also possibly something that they do if they have like a little like a collapsible like an antenna kind of thing, and then they can just remotely shoot it out. That could be cool.
To my body. The hinge pin is just some mild steel rod that I pressed in, and the torsion spring puts enough side load on it to not fall out. I used some heat set threaded inserts to install the spring and the sear. The sear holds down the arrow socket and is released with some monofilament or fishing line. I have two different versions of the sear to be able to release it pulling in different directions depending on what orientation I'm wearing it. You'll notice in some of the shots I'm releasing it myself, which doesn't sell the effect super well, but ideally you would have someone off camera release it for you.
I love the little skits.
For camera shots where I was already struck with an arrow, I needed something to hold the arrow on me and be hidden underneath my shirt. I came up with this design. It's printed from TPU, which is flexible to be able to conform to my body. It has a heat set threaded insert that's installed into a counterbore from the back side of the part. This is especially important with flexible parts because when you bend the part, the hole around the insert opens up. There's a stiffener down the front to keep the weight of the arrow from bending it down. And of course it has loops for Velcro one wrap to attach it to me. For the threaded arrow, I cut the head off a screw and then drilled an undersized hole so that I could try something new, which was to heat up the screw before inserting it, kind of like how knife makers heat bed a tang into a handle. I'm not really sure it was any better than threading it in cold in this case, but it was cool to try.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
So in the movies when they get shot with arrows and then they break them off, I've always thought that was like nuts. Can you imagine this thing inside of you?
And then you like...
while you're trying to snap this in half, it sounds horrifying.
Yep.
Don't break it, push it through. Pushing the fletching through. So one of the
Ugh,
crazier
yeah,
ways
all of
that
it's
before
bad.
CGI, they would make it look like
All of it's bad. Well, that's why you have to. That's why you break it. I think, right? Is so that like you don't have to push the the fletching through. Because again, because pulling it back out with the barb is worse. So get it the whole way through is better somehow. But like, no, thank you.
an actor got shot with an arrow is they would have the actor wear special protective armor under their costume and then would shoot them with an actual arrow. But these weren't just any arrows, they were tipped with hardened steel spikes so that they would stick into the actor's armor. You're probably thinking, that's wild. Why would they take the risk and not just use a pop-up rig? Well, pop-up rigs don't work with every camera angle. Steel pronged arrows are great for straight-on shots when the pop-up rig couldn't be hidden. In Braveheart, one of my favorites, they used pronged arrows a ton, and you can notice them if you watch it back frame by frame. Lots of arrows shot at shields. One guy you can see grab the pad on his thigh. One dude takes one in the foot. And a lot of shots where the arrow is already placed on the body and they just sell it with a quick cut and a reaction. To build this special arrow, I cut the tip
pretty
off
good,
and I drilled in
actually.
2 holes. Then I sharpened some hardened steel wire. Mine were 40 thousandths diameter, and I CA glued them.
See, I was thinking that it like, you know, if in a movie, just reverse, like, you know, you could do that with reversing the footage. I think that would work. I still think that would work. But maybe that's too low budget. When you can shoot Mel Gibson, why not take the opportunity?
Oh, and I forgot to mention, the trick to making this shot safe is guiding it with a wire, although they didn't always use this safety measure. In this case, I used monofilament. This way we can be almost certain where the arrow will land every time. To connect the arrow to the wire, I installed the world's tiniest eye screws at each end of the shaft. The threads on these are so tiny, it's hard to believe they actually bite. They also used to use piano wire or music wire, which is hardened steel wire, presumably so that they can go even thinner while still having a really strong wire. So this bow is only a 30-pound draw. I chose a pretty lightweight bow because it's just for camera and only needs to look convincing to the unkeen eye. Not like I'll actually be killing Urukai with this thing. A lightweight bow probably makes the actor look more proficient than they actually are. I know I could use all the help I could get. I've only been shooting this thing for like 2 months now. So I gotta make some wooden body armor to protect me against the steel pronged arrows. I've been
I wanted to be good at archery so bad because of Disney's Foxy Robin Hood. I wanted to be an archer. I wanted to be able to do it. And then Legolas didn't help by being super awesome at archery. And I wanted to be good at archery so badly. And then in gym class in high school, we did archery units and I was abysmal. I was devastated. I was like, for some reason, I was convinced that archery was going to be like the one athletic thing that I was like naturally good at. And I was just going to be like an amazing like prodigy with a bow and arrow. And it turns out I wasn't. I was pretty good right off the bat with the sword though. So
I'm seeing this book called Secrets of Hollywood Special Effects, and they call out their old school recipe for body armor, which is 1.5 inches hardwood backed up by 1/8 inch steel backed up by heavy sheep's wool and leather padding. I think that is incredibly overkill. 1/8 inch of steel, that's a bit much.
Look, these are actors, okay? Protect the fleshy actors. They don't know what they're doing. Come on, man.
I think most of that is just to make the actors feel better about getting shot by an arrow.
Yeah!
From my testing here with my arrows, the way I'm shooting them, into plywood, I think 1.5 inches of plywood is going to be totally sufficient, but I am going to shape it to be a little more curved to hide underneath my shirt, so it will...
Also, that might be too, it's like that was because it was less wood, right? And then steel in the back, just because like, how much did he say? And how much? 1/8 of an inch?
With my arrows, hardwood, their old school recipe for body armor.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So it's still 1.5 inches of hardwood with 1/8 inch of steel back. Okay. Because I was thinking that if they used less, and then the wool and the padding, I was thinking using less wood would make it easier to hide with costuming, because it's like you don't want it to be super obvious that your guy's wearing all that much padding. But nope, they use the same amount of plywood. That's a It's a lot. That is thick.
Which is 1.5 inch hardwood backed up by 1/8 inch steel backed up by
That would be harder to.
sheep's wool and leather padding.
That'd be
I
harder
think that
to
is
hide.
incredibly overkill. 1/8 inch of steel, that's a bit much. I think most of that is just to make the actors feel better about getting shot by an arrow. And from my testing here with my arrows, the way I'm shooting them, into plywood, I think 1.5 inches of plywood is going to be totally sufficient, but I am going to shape it to be a little more curved to hide underneath my shirt, so it will reduce the thickness a little bit. We'll be okay.
All right. I will also say he should still keep the padding on there just because you're still getting shot with something, so like that will presumably still have the ability to bruise, you know? So it's like the padding, I think that helps with like cushioning the impact of getting actually shot with something. Because like I can bruise somebody by just like 2 fingers to the chest. You can bruise somebody pretty easily. So like put some padding on there.
Okay.
The cinematic shots of the sawdust are hilarious.
I was going to 3D print some contoured armor, but the prongs didn't really stick well into PLA when I tested. They just bounced off.
A little close to the neck, bud.
Close. Before I possibly put this armor on, I want to test and see just how reliable this string is, because it might not be worth me catching an arrow in the throat.
Oh my.
We'll see. So I'm gonna have my stunt double, Tom Bruce, stand in for me as a test dummy. When they talk about doing this effect in the book, they say that an effects person would hold the end of the monofilament by hand so that they can move around with the actor as they're moving and keeping it taut at the same time. And then once they shoot, they can let go of the line and then the actor's free to move and fall over and do whatever. The book also says they used to do this shot without a wire, so freehand, but using an air gun. The author said they once shot an actor from 12 feet without a wire, so let's pace that out.
That's a huge step that he just took
for someone who just picked up archery last month. This is kind of concerning. I don't need a full draw for this. Let's give this a shot on Tom Bruce.
I mean,
so anyways,
you killed him.
Grab that thing on me and give it a shot. That's not obvious at all, isn't it?
Look, it's
so the plan is
it's a movie. They'll take it out.
It's taut. The light stand is now held back by a sandbag. Yeah.
Ooh, dang.
You kind of don't even need to shoot it.
No, we need to shoot.
Okay.
He's like, please let me shoot you.
You should just a tad harder this time. I gotta work on my acting. But
yeah, a little bit, but
crazy.
He has a really good, like, intense face when he was doing the skits earlier. Just like, you know, whatever it was he was doing. Like, I'm ready to fight. Like, he was doing that very well.
See some tiny holes.
But not the, you know?
This is crazy. This used to be normal practice in movies, apparently, before CGI. I'm sure they still use it in niche cases now if they want a certain look.
Close-ups and stuff. That's pretty good.
Hollywood-sized effects.
The fact, because you can't tell. It does, like, he made those things good enough that you cannot tell. Wild that he let them shoot through his jeans.
The budget is really...
Granted, I guess, you know what? It's just 2 little holes. 2 little holes.
Really tough. So if you want to see me make larger special effects, like eventually the Dark Knight truck flip, perhaps,
that was a cool one.
Then supporting me on Patreon would help.
I remember everybody getting super excited about the...
Right there. Got it.
Cool.
Yeah, finally split the arrow.
I also made this tiny plate for smaller areas like the shoulder or the butt.
Yeah,
the butt.
A lot of trust, dude.
The butts! The butts!
In your butt.
What? That was 100% not acting.
The butt! I don't know how, like, drink every time I say the butt. I don't know why I said that, so I'm such a child.
Sound like it does in the movies. In fact, it doesn't really sound like much at all. It's kind of underwhelming. In my very limited experience, bowstrings don't seem to creak at all. In fact, here's what it sounds like. Nothing. I wanted to get
maybe you need a compound
a shield, so first I had to make one. The nice thing about making crude medieval stuff is your panel glue-ups don't have to be flat.
So I'll be ducking behind this shield while my brother shoots me with a steel-pronged arrow.
Oh my god, terrifying. Terrifying.
It's crazy. We just reviewed the footage from that, and This arrow comes in completely horizontal while the others come from the sky.
If we had a ladder and more people, we could have made this work, but instead we switched gears and tried this same shot with the pop-ups instead. This shows how these effects can be better in some cases than others. I was having trouble triggering all three at the same time with the angle I was pulling.
When you put an eyelet right on the edge, then no matter what angle you can
Collaborative.
Hey, nice.
For this shot, I tied the monofilament to my bootlaces.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
I love learning new things, and this channel started with me learning how to build stuff, and now I'm combining that with learning special effects. And a great resource for learning new things is this video's sponsor, Skillshare. What I really love about these videos I make, aside from building stuff, is learning filmmaking. I'm not very good at it, but filming skits to incorporate the stuff I build is super fun.
Well, see,
So
like I
took a
said, I
class
like
called
his skits,
Cinematography
so
Basics, Understanding
apparently
Filmmaking
he's learned
Style.
quite a bit.
And I really am excited to have finally learned a method to create shot lists. Planning out scenes can seem kind of complicated to me. I gotta have stuff written down to keep track of it.
It
I'm a
is.
big notes guy.
And you have to do it first. You have to do, like, so many times, and this is something that I always hated doing, is like, I kind of was like, let's just go. Like, I know what I want it to look like. I know what this is, but you know, you have to like plan out each shot well in advance. And then when you get there on the day, you can figure out what works and what doesn't. But like, I always hated doing the shot list first. I always hated it.
I'm using a method I made up, but I'm glad to have finally learned a more thought-through method that I could use when collaborating with other professionals on the same project. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives, with thousands of classes led by industry experts across film, illustration, design, freelance, productivity, and a bunch of others. They have a learn-by-doing approach to teaching, to where a member could create a project using things they learned in the class and then share it with the community for feedback. The first 500 people to use my link in the description will get a 1-month free trial to Skillshare.
you all
Get
won't
started
get that.
today. In every good medieval battle scene, there's the iconic shot where a whole company of archers looses their arrows at once to basically rain down a cloud of arrows onto their enemies.
Our arrows will blot out the sun.
Well, dang, they did.
To accomplish this, I needed a lot of arrows. I handmade 150 mock arrows that were just for the air cannons. Real arrows are expensive, and my mock arrows just needed to have the silhouette of an arrow when
Yeah, a
backlit
little
against
dowel
the
rod
sky,
with a
and so I
feather.
used cheap dowels. I was
Love
going
a
to
dowel
3D
rod.
print a bunch of arrowheads, but then I figured I could just sharpen the tips of the dowels and then paint them black.
Yep, that'll work.
I thought about how much time it would take to mask the tip of every arrow and spray paint them black, so instead I just dipped them in thin paint.
Again, brilliant. I love it.
I
Because it
printed
doesn't
a
have to be
guide
perfect,
evenly
right?
space out where the fletching would go,
That part you have to do individually,
and then I
guess.
CA glued the fletching on.
That part would take a while.
And I had a lot to do, so I put in some music and I knocked them out in about 4 hours.
Okay, still. Pretty good, pretty
You've seen me
good.
build many different air cannons in the past, but this time I went for simplicity and low cost. I got a tire-beating air cannon, which conveniently came with a big 1.5-inch port on the side, and a 12-volt solenoid valve, which should be pretty quick and high enough flow for what I need. The barrels are a PVC pipe with a 3D printed reducer epoxied on and a foam sabot.
Okay.
My first test was promising, but I was pretty disappointed with
Yeah,
how
they
short
kinda-
they landed.
Don't tell my HOA I'm testing ancient weapons in their park.
And for the rest of the cannons, I
Fuck the
happened to find extra
HOA.
valves that cost twice as much as the one I used on the yellow cannon.
Oh my god! That was spectacular! That went like 3 times the distance as last time.
Who would have thought?
So you want to be very careful then with this particular thing, especially if you are in a public park and you don't know how far things are going to go.
cheap valve would have had way less flow than a high quality one. I tested a couple different barrel diameters, and of course the smaller diameter shot less arrows further, but I found the larger one had plenty of power to go the distance I wanted, and it held more arrows, which meant I needed fewer air cannons.
I gotta make sure no one's walking their dog down there before
Yeah,
I rain hellfire
for real.
down upon them.
That's what I just said.
That's one of the coolest things I've ever seen. As
That
I
is
do
pretty
editing
good.
and stuff, I'm learning that it's not as much about the air pressure, because the black one actually had less than the yellow. It's more important about the flow rate and the area through the pipe.
Oh my god.
And 3, 2, 1.
Wow!
That was awesome!
I love
That's
that the
pretty
one
frightening though.
that did the flip.
For liability reasons, I cannot recommend that you use 3D printed parts and PVC plumbing for compressed air.
Oh my god. That's awesome
You're
though.
telling me that if I stood right here with 150 archers shooting at me, I would have been totally fine.
Don't put the dummy in there and try it.
Let's freaking go! That was the money shot. Panning through the sky.
That was
just
pretty
like
good.
Every ancient warfare movie ever.
That was pretty good. Oh my god.
Archers!
That was pretty good.
Lock!
He's doing a
Draw!
voice.
Loose!
I love his little skits. That edit was a little bit wonky, but
Man, I am fired
That was
up
pretty good.
about learning special
everything except for that last little, like that one little edit, it was a little bit wonky, but like pretty good. It was mostly an angles thing, like that. Like it was mostly just of where things were placed, and like it just needed to be tilted a little differently. But look, that's not what this is about. That was still really good.
effects and combining it with my fabrication skills. It is absolutely what I want to be working on right now. And so
That
I hope
was
you guys
cool.
are enjoying this.
I did enjoy
Let me
it.
know what other practical effects I should build next. Today we test how before CGI they shot actors. The effects I'll be building today are pop-up arrows.
Bouncing.
Today we test how before CGI they shot. God dang it, I'm too good at that.
I was just like the.
Let's freaking panning through the sky.
I just want to watch it again because like the
Ancient
edit felt a little bit
warfare
weird
movie
to me, and I want to just double check it. Let's see if I can like put into words why it was weird.
Archers, knock!
No.
Draw! Loose!
Then yeah. Yeah, it's just the arrow, like where it's the angle. It's like where they were coming from, like in the original shot when they're kind of going at like this kind of angle, and then like to just go to them being straight, like just like right in front of it. That's all it is.
Loose!
See like how they're coming at this, like this way. They're kind of going off into the right-hand corner. They're going up into the sky towards the the right. And then like they're still going off to the right, but like it's just the way that it's angled here, it's just too straight on. It needed to stay a little bit more low. You just needed to see it a little bit more from the angle, like in the lower left. Especially the way that it now, because then once you get to, no, because it's this whole pan, it's just at slightly the wrong filming angle. Because then, and then to go into that. So here, now it's too straight. And like, again, there was a little bit of a jump cut there. Maybe if they'd started it here.
Loose!
Going up. So they should have like, it goes up and then disappear into the clouds. This is all fine. That's too close. They needed to, this is where they should have cut. To make it just feel a little bit more cohesive. Then they go down. That's pretty cool. And then when they start angling down, this one needed to be over a little bit more also to see it coming on more straight on. But then that's pretty good.
Man, I am
Anyway, sorry. That's what I think. That's what I think. There was a couple of ways that they could have made that feel a little bit more cohesive there at the end, but like he said, he was learning the filmmaking thing. And that was really the only part of any filmmaking class that I did that I excelled in was the editing part. Because that was the only part I liked. Well, I liked acting, but like I didn't like filming things. because I didn't like being behind the camera and like figuring out the shot. I hated that. Hated figuring out the shots. I liked putting them together later. But anyway, I went off on a little tangent there, just trying to figure out how I would have probably tweaked it a little bit, like where I might, based on the footage that he had. I think he did quite well. And it's really cool what he's doing. All right, Tyler Bell, that's really sick. Good job. Well done. I like his sketches. That was a really cool, it was an interesting thing to do. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I'll see you in the next one.